Thank you very much for those who are joining us in the gallery. I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder to call our committee of the whole meeting on April 13th, 2026 to order at 6 p.m. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. I'd turn it over to Councillor Sadhu for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral and Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between the Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Councillor. We have no additions to the agenda, so I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Stu, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We do have a public meeting to start off this evening. This is a public meeting as outlined under the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to consider zone change application 01-26-53-75 Brubaker Street in Baden-DS-2026-05. I will now turn it over to Cameron Miller, our Senior Development Planner, to provide an overview of this application.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Salmon, this application is proposing to rezone the property from Zone 4A to Zone 4 and to reduce the minimum lot area requirement, as well as to reduce the exterior side yard requirement from 6 meters to approximately 3.9 meters to allow for an entrance canopy. The proposed building would be 3 stories and contain 54 apartment units, and the proposal includes 81 surface level parking spaces, an outdoor patio, and an indoor gym. The site's been through various development approvals, such as a 12-unit townhome development approved by Council in 2013, and more recently a 22-unit stacked townhome development in 2022. Neither of these plans have proceeded, and the applicant is now seeking to repeal the previous zoning and construct an apartment building. Since those previous approvals, the properties remain vacant, but services have been extended, and Brubaker Street's been reconstructed with sidewalks in preparation of development. The applicant has recently completed a similar development, which is a 32-unit apartment building at the corner of Brubaker and Cenars Road East. In support of the applicant submitted several supporting documents, such as an environmental impact study, an updated noise study, and a functional servicing report to reflect the changes in development that have occurred since 2022. After the report was published, staff did receive 2 written submissions expressing some concerns with the development, and staff will return to Council at a future meeting with their comments and with a more detailed report and recommendation on the application once any additional comments which are raised this evening have been addressed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Wilkinson? And to clarify, this is technical questions. We'll get, yes.
Through the chair, one thing I was wondering about that I didn't necessarily see noted was what about the rail crossing in particular? I mean, did we look at potentially putting in the arms and the lights there as well? Is that something that will be coming down the line, or what's the status?
Through you, Mayor Salmon, Councillor Wilkinson. So CN was circulated on this application. That's not something that they commented on in particular. As part of that, separate to the application, there was an updated noise study and things of that nature, but an updated rail crossing is not something that was contemplated at this stage. So that's something that we can address in a future staff report.
Through the chair, thank you. I would just suspect that given the proximity to the rail crossing and how many people are going to be living there, that it would make sense. So hopefully we can see CN address that.
Councillor Stu.
Thank you. And through the mayor, as far as the height of the building, I understand it is 3 stories. How would the height look compared to the sister unit south, which is on Schneider's? I know it's an elevated landscape, so is it going to stand up much higher, or is it going to Just as far as the height-wise, is it going to be relatively level to what's on Schneider's Road?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Sadhu. The height is similar to the development at 162 Snars Road East. In particular, all things equal, if we take the facades that are facing, street facing, this development would actually be a little bit shorter in height, about a little under a meter. If we take the highest point, which would be the drop-off that you're referring to the south elevation, we're looking at about 12-ish meters. If you contrast that with the previously approved development, the maximum height was 10.5 meters, but building height is measured a little bit differently because with a townhome development with a peaked roof, you take the max height measurement is through the midpoint of the roof. So essentially, again, they are similar in height, slightly shorter if you take street-facing facades as being equal in this scenario because there is a drop-off at the south elevation of that property.
Okay, and I will ask if the applicant or their agent wishes to provide any additional comments for this public meeting. I understand that their agent's attending virtually.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I believe I do have a presentation that was circulated to clerks, if that's possible to get that up.
Yes, I think they're just uploading it now,
Okay.
Christian.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, whenever
All right.
you're ready. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Simonides. I am a senior planner with Up Consulting. Here is the agent on behalf of the applicant and owner of the lands identified as 5375 Brubaker Street. So this presentation pertains to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment application to permit a 3-story apartment building on the subject lands. So next slide, please. And then you could skip this one as well, please. So as previously noted, so the subject lands are known as 53 to 75 Brubaker Street and is approximately 4,892 square meters or about 0.48 hectares in size. Ignore the lot area noted on the slide here. I apologize that is an error. So again, this property fronts Brubaker on both the northern and western property lines. The site is currently vacant and is, in our opinion, an underutilized property that's within the urban boundary of Baden. I would also like to note that a small portion of the eastern and southern sides of the lands contain natural heritage features as well as an associated wetland with the Baden Creek there. So per the scoped environmental impact study as well as the staked floodplain limit, the proposed development will be located entirely outside of these areas. Next slide, please. So this slide here just provides a brief overview of the context. Again, just being within the urban area of Baden, there are certainly a number of residential, commercial, institutional, as well as open space uses within proximity of the subject property. And then, as noted by Cameron, there is the 3-story apartment building at 162 Schneider's Road East. That's just to the south there of the subject property. That would be very similar in nature. So next slide, please. So this slide gives an overview of the proposed development. So the applicant again is proposing a residential apartment building that's 3 stories in height. A total of 54 dwelling units are proposed, with unit types ranging from 1 to 3 bedrooms. However, I'd like to note that it's likely 2 and 3 bedroom units as the project team is currently working through these details. So a total of 81 parking spaces are proposed, which equals a total parking ratio of 1.5 spaces per unit. And importantly, that meets the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw. There are 3 accesses proposed to the site, 1 from the western side and then 2 from the north. I would also like to note, and Cameron certainly touched on this briefly, that there is an ongoing site plan application that's active and running concurrently with this zoning bylaw amendment application. And I'll note that the site plan approval would certainly be subject to the approval of this zoning bylaw amendment application. So next slide. So this slide is just the overview of the site plan, illustrating the building placement as well as the proposed surface parking area to the rear as well as the sides. As noted, there's 3 accesses, 1 to the west, 2 to the north. There's also a Moloch garbage system to the east internalized within the site, as well as temporary snow storage. Again, going back to the whole environmental and floodplain aspect, you can see the blue line at the bottom of your screen. So that represents the floodline limit. And you can see that the development is located outside of that, following the direction of the GRCA as well as the environmental impact study. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's being requested, the zoning bylaw amendment application is seeking to repeal and replace that existing Zone 4A portion of the site to just Zone 4, which permits apartment buildings. So as part of that, there will be two site-specific provisions that are being requested. Again, one is to reduce the minimum lot area, as this is an existing condition of the parcel fabric, as well as to reduce that exterior side yard setback for the entrance canopy. And again, that would only pertain to the entrance canopy and not the building face. And then I would also like to go back to what Cameron noted about the previous zoning bylaw amendment that was approved back in February of 2022, which rezoned the subject lands to allow for townhouses. So since that time, the applicant and our ownership has changed hands, and the applicant's zoning bylaw amendment request is to ultimately revert back to that previous Zone 4 that was originally in place to allow for apartment buildings on the site. So next slide, please. And this is just my last slide here. Again, I just wanted to highlight the number of reports and plans that were submitted as part of both the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan application. So certainly this is to ensure that the proposal is thoroughly reviewed from a technical perspective. So next slide. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for having me. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian. Councillors, were there any technical questions for Christian at this time? Okay, not seeing any. Again, as this is a public zoning meeting, are there any persons who are present tonight who would like to speak in support of this application? Okay. Is there anyone online, clerks? Nope. Okay. And are there any persons present who would like to speak in opposition to this application tonight? And are there any online? Okay. So with that, this public meeting is now closed. The recommendation for council is that this report be received for information this evening. May I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to our second public meeting of the evening, and this is also a formal public meeting under the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to consider the draft plan of subdivision 30T-22602 and zone change application 11-22 for Activa Holdings in Baden. And I will now invite Andrew Martin, our Director of Development Services, to provide an overview of this application.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. I'll keep it very brief as the consultants are here to make a presentation, but briefly, this was held at these applications were considered rather at a public meeting in July of 2023. Since that time, the development has changed slightly. They've incorporated lands at the rear of the property that contain wetland and woodland features and have incorporated as an open space block to be conveyed to the municipality. Unit ranges have changed slightly. There's now a proposal for apartment buildings where townhomes were previously proposed. So they're proposing a range of units within 2 blocks, whether it be townhomes, stacked townhomes, excuse me, or apartment blocks, up to heights of potentially 6 stories, is what's proposed in the development. Essentially, they've also provided some possible solutions on traffic and speed mitigation along the existing Isaac Shantz and Jacob Cressman roads that lead to this neighborhood. There is connectivity provided between the developments to basically spread out the traffic connections between the existing neighborhood and ultimately the draft approved subdivision to the west that would gain access directly out to Snyder's. So there's multiple ways to get to the development, but they are proposing traffic calming measures to help mitigate what's being perceived as existing concerns with traffic and to ensure that this new neighborhood is not creating new impacts in terms of speed and ultimately to hope the desired solution would be to have people choose alternate routes and not all in one road connecting to this subdivision. I'm going to leave my comments at that because I think that would be a lot of duplication with what the consultant is providing, but certainly staff are here to answer any questions. The intent is to have a public meeting to listen to any concerns or comments that are raised and then to come back to council with a detailed report and recommendation at a later point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. I will then turn it over to the applicant's agents, and I believe that Mr. Chauvin and Mrs. Wolf are here in person. Thank you for joining us this evening. I believe they're just getting up your presentation now.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, members of the public, staff. My name is Pierre Chauvin. I'm with MHBC Planning here on behalf of the owner and developer Activa Holdings. They're a local developer based out of Waterloo and have, as you may or may not know, have developed what we call the original Baden subdivision almost several years ago. I'm dating myself. Just next slide. I just need to tell you. Yeah. Andrew mentioned how this is a second public meeting. It's been some time since the first public meeting in July of 2023, and since that time we've been responding to agency comments, peer review comments, and now we're back before you. Because of that lapse in time, I think staff felt that it was appropriate to have this second public meeting. So here we are, and we hope to ideally address any further comments that may come out of today's meeting and bring it back forward to council for a decision, hopefully this year. Next slide. In terms of the new draft plan, as before, there's a whole network of local streets that are proposed. They're in somewhat of a modified grid pattern, similar to building off of the existing subdivision to the south. There's now a range of 302 to 421 units proposed, and about 117, 157 of these units are constituted as multiple units that will be in the form of towns or stacked towns or apartments. There is a requirement in the regional official plan, which is still in effect, but also I note that's being carried forward in your draft official plan that 30% of new dwellings have to be in this form of housing. So we are at about 36 to 38%, and so achieving that requirement. The stormwater management facility is up in the, I'll call it in the northeast quadrant of the subdivision next to the open space wetland area to the north. That hasn't changed. We have had to do some further study in terms of environmental and hydrogeological analysis to demonstrate that we are not impacting the wetlands in the open space area. And those open space areas have now been included in the plan of subdivision, including the hydro corridor, just immediately north of that, and they are intended to be conveyed entirely to the township. When you add those two blocks together, it says 7.45 hectares. In English, that's 18 acres. But when you add the hydro corridor, there's another 2 acres being added to that. So about 20 acres being conveyed to the township, which will be in the form of stormwater management and open space areas. There's also, as before, a series of perimeter trails and walkway connections throughout the plan. I should note early on, even prior to the first meeting, we had adjusted the street pattern to ensure that all the traffic, a majority of the traffic, would flow towards the west and south through the adjacent plan of subdivision, which is approved already. And the intention to hopefully alleviate any additional traffic through the existing plan of subdivision. There is still a multiple block and some single detached lands that would have direct access to either Jacob Cressman or to Isaac Shantz, but the majority of the development would want to travel to the northwest direction, as they would have to essentially go backwards to go to the south. So I just wanted to point that out. That was one change that was made early on prior to even the first public meeting. Next slide. This slide just essentially summarizes the changes that we've made. We've obviously, with the changes, we've increased the unit count slightly, or they've been updated. In terms of the area number I identified as number 2, that is an area where we are introducing what would probably be a new form of housing in Wilmot. It would be back-to-back towns. It is providing for a different form of housing that is a little more intense. Activa has built this form of housing elsewhere in the region and has had lots of success. with that particular product. I would say we had to do that because of the lot depths we had to increase within the area identified in number 3 there in the plan, in order to achieve more off-street parking. The township has a requirement that on lots that are under 11 meters wide, you have to have a setback of 9 meters to the garage to allow for 2 cars parking. So in order to achieve that, we had to increase the depths of those blocks to allow for that off-street parking. And in doing so, we're left with some remnant land effectively, but just enough land to create this block of stacked townhouse products, which would be interfacing with the proposed multiple residential block just immediately north and backing onto the proposed wetland. In terms of the multiple number 4 then, that block was slightly revised because it was encroaching into lands that are now outside the urban area. Those lands were not included through ROPA 6 originally as a result of being within the MDS setback from the adjacent livestock operation. And similarly, in number 5, you'll recall, some of you may recall, there were residential units on the other side of that proposed Street 1, which connects to Isaac Shantz, and we had to remove those residential blocks as well for the same reasons. And lastly, as I mentioned, number 6, that 20 acres of open space wetlands and stormwater management pond would be conveyed to the township. And we envision, through further analysis and detailed design, that the ultimate trail network may be able to make its way not only through the stormwater management pond and on the hydro corridor, but also perhaps even through the open space, subject to proper siting and environmental analysis. But that would be the ideal scenario, to have more of a passive green space for the community. Next slide. This just summarized the proposed zoning. You can see the large green space I was just referring to. That'll be zoned your open space. All the yellow areas will be zoned Z2B. That is very similar, and you can see a lot of that interfacing with the existing subdivision. That's the same zoning that applies to those lots within the existing subdivision. The area in blue are smaller lots, intended to be smaller lots. The Z2C, which allows for 30-foot wide lots or street towns. Then you can see the sort of light pink, or the pink area, or salmon colored, that is the back-to-back towns. So that will be the zone 3. And finally, the 2 multiple residential blocks, which would permit apartments, towns, cluster towns, stack towns, those types of things. Next slide, please. So these next couple of slides just kind of illustrate sort of the built form that is being contemplated here. So within those Z2, those lower density zones, this would permit single detached dwellings that range either in lot widths from 36 to 50 feet. These are actual Activa products, and this is what that sort of typology would look like. Next slide. In terms of the smaller lot products, so the 30-footers are more internalized to the subdivision. This would allow for smaller singles in the street towns. So again, you can see on the left-hand side some of the that typology that's proposed within that zoning. And then lastly, in the zone, next slide, please. In the back-to-back towns, I mentioned, as Activa has built this product before in the community, in the region in particular. Here is again some of the built form that typically looks like. They're typically 3 stories in form and have basically, if you're not familiar with it, they're essentially towns, but they're also linked at the rear of the house as well. So their amenity space actually is more in the form of either rooftop or even balcony space. And this has been really successful, in particularly sort of the aging community and those who don't really want that particular amenity space to look after. And last slide, this is effectively the multi-blocks. And again, this zoning would permit stacked towns. You can see some of the stacked town products on the left-hand lower pictures. And then apartment, this is a particular apartment they built in Waterloo. And that's the type of, this is albeit a 4-story, apartment style, but that's really what the range and housing form that we are looking at. And last slide before I end. So again, the whole concept with this design and development is really to promote sort of that connectivity and walkability. As you can see, we not only have in the yellow lines sort of just your typical sidewalk network, but we're also making connections that exist, connecting to the existing road stubs that were established to Jacob Cressman and Isaac Shantz. Mr. Martin alluded to some of the traffic calming measures that are being contemplated, and those were attached in his report along those two stretches circled in red to alleviate sort of some of the traffic concerns with respect to some portions of the existing development. But also there's a whole series of other future connections in the darker blue. We are connecting to the existing road pattern. I would also note that construction traffic will not be going through the existing subdivision. It will be directed to that southern arrow, dark blue arrow, which is through the adjacent plan of subdivision. So the intention is that construction traffic won't be directed through the existing settlement. And then lastly, the whole trail network, as I mentioned. Again, this is just a notion in terms of what's illustrated, but there's not only walkways and trails along the perimeter. You can see on the very perimeter of the plan on the west side and southern side, but then the opportunity that is there to connect through the natural space and stormwater management pond. So those are my sort of summaries and comments with respect to the changes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chauvin. We will go to Councillor Wilkinson first.
Thank you. Through the chair. Mr. Chauvin, do you recall the last public meeting when you came and presented this plan?
I do, yes.
Why have you presented a plan that goes contrary to all the comments you received?
Councillor, I'll just remind you, as it's a public meeting, this isn't feedback on a report. This is
The question stands.
fair.
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I believe we have addressed or heard the comments, and we've made changes that we heard from a technical perspective and addressed those. I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of other comments that we haven't addressed. So, if you could be more specific.
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, off the top of my head, you've increased the density, which I don't think anybody asked for. You haven't addressed the giant chasm between the existing neighborhood and the new neighborhood, basically creating a tunnel in between the two. I recall a lot of folks were asking for the streets to be closed off and provide walkways between the two areas. I believe we asked for park space. None of that is present. What I see here is you've found a way to cram more units into this proposal, which no one wants. So I'm just curious why you guys did that.
I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of creating a tunnel. Can you elaborate on that?
Through the chair, the existing residential that exists on Goldschmidt, Crop, and Michael Myers, you have a trail/drainage corridor that goes on to blocks 12, blocks 1, actually just those. And in effect, the initial design, and it still looks to be present here, is that you've created a tunnel between the two neighborhoods.
Are you referring to the Street 1 between Jacob Cressman and Isaac Shantz?
No, I'm looking at the homes and lots that exist on Michael Myers, Goldschmidt, and Crop. And then I'm looking at your proposed Block 1 and Block 12. And I think it's Block 23 you've identified as trail/drainage corridor. Block 24, drainage corridor. So the last time you were here talking about it, it was essentially going to be a walkable path in between the houses. So, you know, that was direct feedback that nobody was particularly looking for that.
So, trying to understand, I apologize, Madam Mayor, I'm trying to understand the comments so I can answer, but we have always identified and proposed this channel. Effectively, it's actually more of a trail. There is a slight swale in it to direct existing drainage in that area. but that is intended as a trail connection, but also acting as a buffer between the existing development and the proposed development. And that's no different than what was planned, in fact, and proposed in the adjacent subdivision to the west, but in fact, ours is even wider than that. Ours is 10 meters wide, and will have a trail within it, similar to what's proposed on the adjacent plan of subdivision. With respect to closing streets off, I would say those road stubs at Isaac Shantz and Jacob Crespin have been there since the plan of subdivision. The original plan of subdivision was draft plan approved. We are simply connecting to those. There's actually even service connections in those roads, so we're utilizing existing services, which is just good planning. With respect to increased density, yes, the numbers have gone up. I would say they haven't gone up dramatically, but it was just really a function of how we were able to, as a result of these other changes. Again, the back-to-back towns has helped increase that. The multiple forms that are contemplated in the multi-blocks has increased that. So that's certainly a reason for the uptick. And lastly, on park space, again, we're taking the direction from staff. Staff have not asked for, and your park staff have not asked for any additional parkland. In fact, they prefer and want trails, and that's what we provided.
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. When I was looking at this originally, I thought the density had gone down, but then I realized once I removed the green space that you had allotted, that it had actually gone up roughly about 15%. And I know you mentioned stacked homes, and you already have those in some Activa developments, but those are all in urban, I believe. And 2 6-story apartment buildings, that is a lot of people in a small amount of space. So we've not only changed, someone said to me this was a minor change. We've changed the building type, the height, and the density. So I'm not quite sure why there's such a huge change from when you were here last time.
Well, I think, through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's a matter of perspective in terms of huge. It has gone up, and yes, we're asking for a 6-story apartment, which was approved next door in your adjacent plan of subdivision. I believe the location, particularly the one backing onto the open space, is an appropriate location for that type of housing. It provides housing for aging first-time home buyers. It will have an elevator. It will be fully accessible. So there is opportunity here that we are trying to provide to the municipality and provide diversity and range of housing, which is good for your community. Yes, you may not be familiar with 6 stories or haven't seen it very often through your community, but you have a huge community here tonight wanting to fight and protect for farmland. That's what we're also here to do, is providing intensification and density within your established urban areas to protect farmland.
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. This is for Director Martin. You and I had had many conversations about this, and I had said to you, you know, you have a 6-story building and then all of a sudden that becomes the standard, and that's what every developer asks for. And you said, nope, nope. And here we are. And it seems to me that every developer that's coming in here is asking for a 6-story apartment building. So really that's going to become the norm. Because all they do is say there's one over here and there's one over here, so why are you denying me? That could be a real issue in a community this size.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, was there a question or was that
And
more
there is
so
a question.
comment?
That's my concern, Director Martin. And I have an issue with the 6-story building, and I know, again, that we have them in our community, and I think it started with the retirement facility first, and it just seems to be multiplying over and over again. So my question to you is, can we put a cap so that we don't have developers come here and ask for 6-story buildings in our official plan?
I would maybe, and you're welcome to jump in, Director, but this is a public meeting under the Provincial Planning Act for this specific zoning request, and it's for information. I'm not saying that's not a legitimate comment or question. I just don't know if this is the appropriate form to have it in, because I think you're right, that's a part of the official plan discussion. I don't know if Director Martin, if you wanted to comment on it, but I do just want to be cognizant of what
Thank you. I will take that back, and Director Martin and I can have this conversation offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, feel free to bring it back during our other official
I will.
plan and comments. Okay. Were there any other questions of Mr. Chauvin at this point in time? Councillor Sadhu? And I do see you, Councillor Martin. I'll get to you after Councillor Sadhu.
It's not so much a question. I still do have the concern of Jacob Cressman and Isaac Shantz. I see they did put traffic calming measures in there, but let's be honest, I mean, generally drivers are going to go with the path of least resistance, and that's going to be through the subdivision, past the schools, in our existing neighborhood. And I do understand that they had future signs up for future expansion and yada, yada, yada. But there's going to be a lot of people back there, and with the density being what it is, I have heard from a lot of residents that are already having a difficult time in the mornings during school drop-offs and pickups, that there's a lot of cars on the road, there's a lot of, all the neighborhood and the kids, they walk to school. So they're not in buses, there's a lot of movement happening. So while I do respect the fact that they are offering speed mitigation, that's not necessarily going to slow down the drivers or deter them from getting from point A to point B. People are going to see the path of least resistance. So I still stand firm on that. I would still like to see a blockade, not so much a blockade, but I would even suspect something as far as leave it as a residential, you can walk through that corridor to get to the back subdivision, and something that can be looked at a future date. Or I do know at Activa, Vista Hills, behind the new Costco, I'm sure everyone kind of has an idea of where I'm thinking about. They have arms that would go up and down, so if there is need for emergency vehicles to get through. However, it still deters the traffic from going through there. It's just spitballing here, something along those lines to see how the traffic is reacting, and still having the ability to adjust and make changes in the future if need be.
Through you, Madam Mayor, happy to work with staff with them on that. If they're going to accept an emergency access, then perhaps that's something we can look at. But again, we're part of, in terms of designing a subdivision, you always have to have that second means of access for emergency purposes, as you know, and that was really part of the reason why we designed it the way it did. And if emergency access, that's gated off or with bollards will help satisfy that, and we can still develop it. It's something we can explore with staff, if that's even something we can go down, a road we can go down. No pun intended.
Any other, Councillor Martin, I had you next on my list.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Salmon.
Sorry, Councillor Martin, we're just going to turn up the volume on you a little bit more because it's hard to hear you from here.
I don't know if there's anything I can do on my end. I have the volume up as high as I can go. Can you hear me?
We're just getting some feedback. If you can just give us a moment, Councillor, to sort that out. Councillor Martin, just in case you can't see, because I'm not certain what view you have, right now our clerks are looking into it to get the audio to work.
Councillor Martin, can you try speaking again, please?
Hello, can you hear me better now?
No, not too well, no.
Okay.
They're going to try something else. Councillor Martin, just as our clerks are continuing to sort out the volume, Councillor Dunstall has another question, so I'll go to her, but I have not forgotten about you, and we are going to get it sorted out.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Director Martin, did I see that the schools had some concerns that they're already overcrowded and there was some concerns about the density?
Through Mayor Solomon, there was a comment from the Waterloo Catholic District School Board that they have a planned school in Baden. They're hoping that it will be online before additional students were to join the neighborhood. They do have interim solutions in place to accommodate it, but it was an advisory comment to say that, you know, like the school boards do in most developments, they say that there's no guarantee just because you see the school beside you doesn't mean that's the school you're going to go to. Essentially is the kind of the Coles Notes version of that, but the comment primarily from the Waterloo Catholic District School Board was to say that, you know, we have a school planned, we have accommodation issues, there might be an interim solution needed until we have that school constructed, which is in the adjacent subdivision to the west.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. Through the chair. So, Mr. Chauvin, to essentially summarize, I want to be clear. I don't think anybody here or in that existing neighborhood is necessarily opposed to development. Everybody knows it's coming, north and west of what's there. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the feedback is this: it's that lower the density. I think, you know, you far exceeded the 30% that is currently mandated by the official plan, like the 30% that would be non-detached or semi-detached. I would almost guarantee that nobody wants to see a 6-story apartment building. I think we've had multiple conversations around this horseshoe, and we've made our thoughts known that 3 stories is sort of the preferred option, if it has to happen. But my preference would be not. I prefer to see towns. So looking to match some of the similar style. I understand the need to develop, and there's no opposition to that. Ultimately, really the spirit of that is wanting to maintain the small town feel, not the busy, high density, populous area, right? We are I hate to say it, but essentially a bedroom community. We need to add industry out here, which is something that, you know, we've tried to plan for, but hopefully we're able to add jobs and opportunity for folks. But most of the people here commute into KW. So to have this type of development, especially being so far away from the main feeder streets, just doesn't make logical sense in my head. And I know a lot of citizens feel the same way. So I think scaling back the density, looking at those knockdown bollards would certainly be the feedback. And primarily because honestly, I guarantee you that no matter how hard you try and direct the traffic west and then south back to Snyder's, people are going to realize real quick that if they cut through the neighborhood and then they end up at Livingston and Snyder's, they're immediately on Foundry and then they're home free to the highway. So you're going to have a lot of crazy backups, because if you have an exit coming out, and this map conveniently here today, right on the middle of Snyder's, you're going to have folks turning left and right, and I don't know what traffic plans the region has for that road, because it is theirs. So those are definite concerns. That's what I would share. Again, I don't think anybody's opposed to the fact that this neighborhood will be developed. We want to help you enable you to do that, but it's making sure that we do it in a way that's respectful of the people that live here. I mean, I've said it before, I'd like to see development, but I don't really care about the people that want to move here. I care about the people that live here and pay their taxes here. So I want to be respectful of them first and foremost before we do anything else that will jeopardize their feelings. That would be my comment.
Okay, Councillor Cressman.
Boy, there sure wasn't this amount of people here when I went to high school. There wasn't anybody behind the castle. So you better watch who's new and who isn't here. So I guess what I'm thinking of, adult, I think you voiced the concern about having opportunity to house retired seniors, who I identify a little more closely with. The need for condos, so I'm betwixt and between. I don't live in a subdivision, never have, so I might be a poor person to give an opinion, but it always seems the people who have the position impose their will on others, And as a farmer, I'm quite concerned about farmland and the farmland and density that we need to ensure that we have a balance between appropriate density and not excessive use of farmland. And so I think we have to consider what is the balance we want to arrive at. Is it 3-story? Is it 4-story? Yeah, I'm not a fan of 6-story either. But at the end of the day, how do we arrive at a balance that makes sense, that reduces the impact on farmland? I know minimum distance separation impacted the land that was owned to the east, respecting the dairy operation, and you need the separation to make sure that that isn't curtailed into the future. And I respect that you backed off in that development or were required to. So I think somehow we have to accommodate the different needs here, and how we arrive at the perfect solution, I think is always a challenge.
Thank you. I'm just going to check in with the clerks how the volume is going for Councillor Martin.
If we could ask Councillor Martin to test again, please.
Can you hear me now?
I know myself and Mr. Chauvin can hear you, and questions will also be noted in the minutes. So the clerks, I think, are asking if you want to try one more time again there, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Salonen. I recognize this is a public meeting, but I want to express appreciation to Mr. Chauvin for bringing forward these proposals. I think they're worth looking at. I think we need a variety of buildings. I don't see many 6-story buildings being proposed. I see that if we do allow some 6-story buildings, it would provide a variety, and we're going to need that variety in building types. And I think as people age, in reference to Councillor Wilkinson's point, I'm speaking about people who live in the township, who pay taxes in the township, and who are requesting alternate styles of housing so that they don't have to leave the township when they have to leave their single-family home. Maybe on a large lot, but they're looking for an apartment or a condo within the township. So I think we need this variety, and those are some of the things that I think about in reference to that. I want to speak in reference to Councillor Dunstall and Councillor Wilkinson and say that there are other people within the township who are saying that and who are requesting these types of plans.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dunstall.
Through you, Mayor, this is for staff. Is there any concern about water? Any concern about that whatsoever? I'm not sure who that question should go to.
Through Mayor Salonen, at this point, when it comes to Baden and New Hamburg, there are no concerns with water. There's lots of water. No, I mean...
Okay, those in the gallery, please refrain.
No, I was just going to say, the concerns that we're hearing right now are related to the integrated urban system. The water that primarily services Baden and New Hamburg isn't from those wells. So we're continuing to review water capacity to ensure that, in fact, there is water to service developments, but all information we have to go by at this point would suggest there aren't concerns. And we continue to monitor to that and are engaged in the conversations regarding water.
And just to add to that, at this point, from the regional perspective, who are the ones who provide the water to the township, they are still allowing for development in New Hamburg and Baden, and to the point that, well, they've said that they can guarantee us our growth until 2051, of which this is currently included. So, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I could respond to Councillor Martin.
I'm not actually looking for a debate.
Well, it's not a debate. This is rather a comment. So for public meeting record, to comment on the idea that I'm somehow opposed to having accessible housing or a variety of housing for the elderly or the folks that require different style housing in this township is simply incorrect. I think it's a matter of where they're located. In the back of a neighborhood far away from amenities and main roads and transportation simply doesn't make any sense to me. I do want folks that live here and have continued to live here their entire lives to have availability of housing options that will allow them to downsize or live in a late stage of their life. That is absolutely top of mind. I just think it's about putting it in the right place. I don't know that having that multi-residential block at the far back would be the appropriate place for it. Some people may disagree. That's my opinion. So that would be my feedback on it. Another item that I wanted to bring to the table here is that there is a stormwater management pond located to the north. It's almost adjacent. I know there's a block of land that you're going to convey to the township, but there are concerns from the folks that live in Foxborough, which is in Ward 2. I represent it. They're concerned about the stormwater management pond and how that may affect the drainage in their low-lying areas, which are south of their property. So I would encourage, please reach out to them and their condo corporation and work with our staff here to ensure that those concerns are addressed, please.
I think that's been taken as a note. Were there any other questions or comments from council? I just had a few myself, and thank you very much, Mr. Chauvin, for coming in today and presenting. One, I don't want to go without notice, but I'm appreciative to see that the open space conveyance has actually grown from the last time that you were in. I wanted clarity, though, on the trails and drainage, and I know Councillor Wilkinson asked a little bit. When you're talking about there will be a trail through it and it's 10 meters wide, I'm a very visual person. Is it similar to what is in the current subdivision here behind the castle, where you have the green space on either side and a walkway, or what exactly would that look like for the user?
Short answer to your question, no, it's not as wide as what you see behind the castle.
Okay.
That is probably, I'm not going to guess how big, but it's definitely more than twice. This is slightly larger than your standard walkway, which is 6 meters wide. We're at 10.
Okay.
So it's
but there would be like a paved part and...
Correct. There's a trail proposed through it, and then there's a swale to deal with the drainage coming from... We are having to deal with existing drainage from the existing residential development, so we have to control that drainage, and that's what that ditch is for.
Okay, thank you. Again, and this is just a comment, I don't need an answer per se, but the apartment suggestion, I do have some of the similar concerns that were raised, particularly in the back of the property, it not being close to current existing transit routes, and based off of GRT's plans, at least in the next 5 years for their rural strategy, they don't look to have transit going out that way. So that's just a bit of a concern for me versus where we have been approving apartment buildings or closer to transit links. And again, just two other items of note that I hope to see when you guys come back. The towns that are currently east of this property in the current existing Activa subdivision right here.
The bungalow towns?
Yes. People really love that, both those that live there, and they have really high resaleability, it seems. And I've had folks in the community who would like to see more of that. So if that's something that you guys would consider, it seems to be a product that people are really looking to downsize into, or for first-time home buyers in the community. And I know that that is one of your products that you guys created.
It is, and also I should mention, even within the stack product, Activa provides fully accessible stack products. So, so we are responding, listening to the market. It's a give and take. So there's a bit of a, what does the market ask for, and we respond. So, and I don't think, having worked with Activa for 30 years, they're not afraid to take chances, and they're certainly newer in the building department. They've always been more of a developer, but now in the last 10, 15 years they're into the building, and what I've seen, they respond in the market like anybody, and if the market's demanding that, for sure. If they know they'll be able to sell it, then that's what they'll build.
You've clearly been in enough rooms with me because I was about to ask about barrier-free products, was my last question. And then the only other thing I would suggest, and I know it's been raised by some councillors, but in the official plan, our update, we're looking at lowering the density amounts. So I think just a reconsideration and rejigging on that. But again, I sit at the crossroads of what Councillor Cressman noted as well, of needing to have density, not sprawl just forever as well. So appreciate that that is a fine line to balance, and that would be my comments. I think that's all of Council's comments at this time. As this is a public meeting under the Planning Act, is there anybody present who would like to speak in support of the application?
Just before you...
Oh, yes, sorry, Mr. Chauvin.
We've heard the comments, and we'll certainly take that back, and heard the density concern, and we'll think about that and come back with something that hopefully that all you and all council can agree to. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you again for coming in tonight. Was there anybody present today that wanted to speak in support of the subdivision? Was there anybody online, clerks? Nope. Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Yes, if you would like to come up, if you could just note your name for the clerks, as it is a public meeting, so they need to have that information, and then you're welcome to make your comments, sir.
Good evening. I had the opportunity to speak in July of 2023, and I do have a few follow-ups. I was really hoping that somebody would show up and say, these are the things that we heard, and then this is what we are going to do to address what we heard. And I don't really think we got that. I think we got a whole lot of the same, and actually worse. So I do have a couple of questions. I don't know how much time I have. But from July 2023, the traffic survey that was used for the design was done in 2021, which is a time where many people were working from home. And since then, our town has seen many of our main roads almost under constant construction, which is diverting traffic into places where it doesn't normally go. So, will another traffic survey be completed that accurately reflects the traffic patterns around Baden, and how will it be used to influence future development? And I don't know if you want someone to answer that, or you want me to step away, or...
So I would look to our director, but my understanding for public meetings is that it's to be received for information. But again, I'd look for clarity under, you're more familiar with the act than I am.
I think, through Mayor Sano, the answer is we would listen to the comments. We'll provide a response in a subsequent report, unless Mr. Chauvin wants to speak to timing on that. But the discussion about the completion of the traffic study and the validity of that information, we would explain further in a staff report when we're presenting a recommendation.
Please proceed.
May I have another? Something that Councillor Wilkinson brought up had to do with park space. If the developer would go back and look to probably the YouTube video that's out there from July of 2023, we did request additional park space, and we did request for these walking trails to be wider so that we didn't create these kind of narrow, funny corridors. And 10 meters behind the existing homes, once you take the swale into account, is not really going to provide a heck of a lot of space for anybody to move through. So I'm hopeful that we can revisit that and get something significantly wider. Those were primarily what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe there was another hand up in opposition. If you'd like to come forward again, give clerks your information as well, and then you have the microphone. Yes, sorry, when you speak into the mic, if you could give your name.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Alex Sully. I live on Croft Drive, directly in front of where the township has proposed the Baden North development. Growth in a community like Baden is expected. However, growth must be properly planned, carefully thought out, and supported by the infrastructure, environmental capacity, and financial realities of the community it is being introduced to. At this stage, there are significant concerns that these conditions are not being met, and that this development is being considered ahead of the township's ability to support it reasonably. The first concern is the scale of population growth and whether our infrastructure can realistically handle it. This proposal includes approximately 302 to 431 residential units, which translates roughly to 800 to 1,200 new residents entering Baden. That is a substantial increase, and it will have real implications for school, roads, water and wastewater systems, emergency services, and community resources. The Township of Wilmot Official Plan and the Region of Waterloo Official Plan both emphasize that growth must be coordinated with infrastructure and services. Growth should not outpace the capacity of the community. At this point, there's no clear demonstration that our existing infrastructure can absorb this increase without negatively impacting our current residents, and that raises serious concerns about whether this development is being proposed at the right time. Alongside infrastructure capacity, there's also the question of financial impact. If infrastructure expansion, servicing, and long-term maintenance are not properly planned and funded, those costs do not disappear. They're transferred to existing residents. Given recent increases in property tax within the township, it is reasonable for residents to be concerned about whether developments of this scale are being introduced without a clear and transparent understanding of their long-term financial impact. There are also important concerns regarding density and compatibility with existing neighborhood. Block 1, which is located directly behind current homes, including my own, is proposed to contain approximately 23 to 27 residential units. In comparison, the existing neighborhood in a similar area contains roughly 16 homes. This represents approximately 1.5 times the density within the same space. Planning policy does not simply allow development, it requires that development be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of character, density, and overall impact. Introducing significantly higher density into an established residential area raises concerns about traffic, parking noise, and overall strain on local infrastructure. These are not theoretical issues, they are immediate real impacts on residents' daily lives. Another major concern is the cumulative effect of construction and traffic within Baden. Many residents have already experienced prolonged road construction and infrastructure projects that have spanned multiple years. These have created ongoing disruptions, including road closures, detours, heavy truck traffic, and impacts to safety and accessibility. We all saw the effects of construction on Snyder's Road, where even a single corridor disruption had noticeable impacts on traffic and commuting throughout the community. Baden effectively relies on a limited number of key routes, and even small disruptions can have widespread effects. Introducing a development of this scale will not only add hundreds of additional vehicles to the road network, but will also bring years of construction activity, further compounding these existing challenges. The township's own planning principles emphasize minimizing disruption to existing communities, and it is a fair question whether layering another large-scale development on top of ongoing infrastructure strain is consistent with that objective. The most critical concern, however, relates to water capacity and environmental sustainability. Waterloo Region is currently facing a well-documented water capacity crisis. There has been a development moratorium along with clear limitations on approvals due to insufficient water capacity for both residents and future growth. Unlike larger urban areas, this region does not have access to the Great Lakes and relies almost entirely on local groundwater systems. This means we are fundamentally limited by the natural carrying capacity of our watershed. In this context, it's difficult to understand how additional large-scale development can be responsibly approved without clear, transparent answers regarding water supply. The question is simple: where will the water come from, not just today, but in the long term? This concern is further compounded by the fact that the environmental impact study supporting this development is largely based on data collected between 2019 and 2020. Given the current pressures on water systems and the pace of environmental change, it is reasonable to question whether this information still reflects present-day conditions. The development is also located adjacent to sensitive natural features, including wetlands and groundwater recharge areas. which play a crucial role in maintaining water balance within the region. There's also the broader issue of farmland loss and long-term sustainability. According to recent census data, Ontario is currently losing approximately 319 acres of farmland every day. Agriculture is not only a defining feature of Wilmot Township, but a critical part of its economy and long-term resilience. Development in this region is occurring on prime farmland, groundwater recharge areas, and environmentally sensitive land. Once this land is lost, it cannot be replaced, and decisions made today will shape the future of this community for generations. In closing, this is not about whether Baden should grow. It is about whether this growth is being introduced in a way that is responsible, sustainable, and aligned with the township's own planning principles. At this stage, there are clear gaps in infrastructure readiness, environmental certainty, financial transparency, and overall planning coordination. Before moving forward, I respectfully ask that the Council require updated environmental and water capacity studies, a comprehensive infrastructure capacity review, an updated traffic impact assessment, and a clear construction management plan that addresses the realities already being experienced by residents. In addition, Council should require a clear, transparent assessment of financial implications of this development, including both short-term servicing costs and long-term infrastructure and maintenance obligations, and how those costs may impact existing taxpayers. Residents deserve to understand how the township plans to fund this project and whether growth of this scale will place additional financial pressure on the community. Growth should strengthen a community, not strain it. At this point, it is not clear that this development achieves this balance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And I did just want to make one note on the regional water issue. Absolutely is an issue. I know I mentioned it before tonight, but since the region announced it, New Hamburg and Baden still have the ability to grow, as it's the integrated urban system that the regional staff have said the issue is located at. But most certainly hear the comments that you're making, because I still have questions about it too. Thank you very much for joining us. Are there any other people present in opposition to the application tonight? Are there any online, clerk? Nope. Okay. So with that, I will call this public meeting now closed. For council, again, the recommendation tonight is that this be received for information. I'd be looking for a mover for that. Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor, and that carries. And on to the rest of our committee agenda. That's all of our public planning meetings for tonight. We do have, and thank you to staff who came for that. We do have one presentation this evening for council, and that is the Wilmot Civic Action Network regarding land assembly. You will have John Jordan and Kevin Thomason joining us, and I think council can see their map here. Thank you for joining us. Just a note before you get into it, but land assembly, as you guys are aware, is a regional and provincial decision-making point, but happy to have you here, as I know that you've had issues trying to get to the region. So with that, you will have your 10 minutes, and thank you both very much for joining us. Clerks should have notified you of that. That's what's in...
I'm sorry?
Clerks said that they had notified you. That's what's in the procedural bylaw for presentations. You can do your absolute best to keep it.
We'll try to be as concise as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that this evening, Mayor, and thank you to the clerk for arranging this for us. My name's John Jordan, along with Kevin Thomason. We're here from Wilmot Civic Action Network. Now we're inviting, I spoke with the mayor previously, if you want to stand up and stand around the map, you can walk on the map. If anyone from the audience, can you hear me okay? If you want to come up, stand around, the mayor has given her blessing for us to do that, because it's very good to see if you can see the map while we are making the presentation. We also have the presentation up on the screen as well.
Just if you can make sure that council can still see, and as can staff. Yeah.
So Wilmot, I'm going to keep talking here while people are doing this. Wilmot Can is a group of concerned citizens from across Wilmot and formed in December of 2024 to ensure a strong community voice in the fight for farmland and the future of our community. Our goal is to build a strong, engaged community that holds its leaders accountable for protecting our essential farmland, surface water, and groundwater. The following presentation will provide you with the information about the proposed growth and population explosion of Wilmot Township due to the Doug Ford government and the region of Waterloo forced expansion of the long-protected countryside line, and for the development of the proposed 770-acre mega-industrial site. We presented on March 31st at Queen's Park and have plans to roll out across the region in the weeks ahead to educate and inform the public. Oh, I got to get down to that bottom thing, don't I? Oh, dang it. Do you want to help me out on that? Maybe if I can tell you next slide, that might work maybe just better so I'm not fumbling around with that. Okay, there we go. The area outlined in yellow, and it's not a yellow on the map, but it is up on our screen, includes the towns of New Hamburg and Baden that lie within the countryside line on the western side of Wilmot Township. The total current population of Wilmot Township is about 24,000 people, of which 14,500 live within the two towns outlined in this area, making up the majority of the population of our township. This is the only part of the township that can grow in population, as the other towns and villages do not have the needed water and sewage capacity and infrastructure to grow. The largest industry by far in our township is agriculture, and our land is made up of the best Class 1 and Class 2 prime agricultural land. This means that we can grow anything here that can be grown in California, except for tropical crops. But we don't have to bring in water for irrigation because of the near-perfect weather conditions of where we are nestled within the Great Lakes and uncommonly good soil. Next slide, please. Zooming into the map inset, we can see where the township of Wilmot lies, outlined in yellow. You can see the larger cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and Guelph to the east, and the city of Stratford about 20 kilometers to the west. The light blue area covering most of Wilmot is the Waterloo Moraine, where 80% of the Waterloo region's water comes from, the other 20% from the Grand River. The Waterloo Moraine is a natural collection and filtration area perfect for providing our drinking water due to the geology of the layers of soil, gravel, and sand created by glaciers 14,000 years ago. However, with all of the development occurring and planned for the future, much of this natural collection and filtration is being paved over and developed, therefore reducing the amount of available water for our region. Next slide, please. Zooming in a little further on the map inset, we want to provide you with some more context and perspective for the size of the area of New Hamburg and Baden. As mentioned, the current population of New Hamburg and Baden is about 14,500 in an area of 3,679 acres, of which a large amount is still farmland. The city of Stratford, as of the 2021 census, has a population of 33,232 in an area of 7,418 acres, over 2 times the area of New Hamburg and Baden. Next slide, please. By moving the area of New Hamburg and Baden into the area of Stratford, you can see it easily fits inside the city limits. However, what you're going to see coming up is the population forecast for New Hamburg and Baden is set to explode to almost 3 times, a population 25% more than Stratford in an area about half the size. Next slide, please. The countryside line. Nope, there we are. Implemented many years ago, and what protects our precious and finite prime farmland and drinking water. This is the township's current status, and as mentioned previously, the population of New Hamburg and Baden, about 14,500, where the prominent colored areas of New Hamburg and Baden comprise 1,789 acres of residential and 363 acres of commercial industrial. Next slide, please. The current capacity of our water sewage capacity can handle about 8,000 to 10,000 more people. For simplicity, we'll use the higher amount of 10,000, although that may be a little optimistic. The countryside line was intended to be a permanent boundary meant to last for generations and provide long-term certainty, reducing land speculation and costs. Already, Wilmot has been the only township to change and alter it. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
And you get to play band.
I get to play band.
We're now going to look at the first stage of additional lands already approved for development. Prior to 2020, Wilmot Township had approved the area shown in bright green for new residential and industrial development. Next slide, please. The Wilmot Employment Lands is the parcel land which sits on the northwest corner of Highway 78 and Nafziger Road. These lands have been sitting empty for well over 2 decades without a single parcel of land purchased for development or new industry in the township. Next slide, please. Additional commercial industrial parcels are located at the intersection of Founders Street and Gingrich Road, just off the south side of Baden. Not all future development is certain. And in fact, it's actually very difficult to predict the future. Hundreds of decisions, perhaps even thousands of decisions, had to go into this map, and we worked for over 8 months with a professional cartographer to try to develop it. We tried to be as conservative as possible. However, some developers will try to develop anywhere and everywhere, so potential developable land needs to be contemplated. Something we certainly question are the parcels on the west side of New Hamburg. Next slide, please. And the parcel which is below Shepherd Place along the Ninth River. Each of these parcels of land are in the floodplain of the Ninth River, yet could face future development, particularly within the urban envelope with services and amenities nearby. Next slide, please. Stage 1 of these lands, already approved for development, increases the projected population increase to 18,000, which is an increase of 3,500 residents from our current state, and reduces our remaining water and sewage capacity to 6,500 people. Next slide, please. And these parcels have increased development land use by more than 331 acres of residential development and 242 more acres of commercial industrial development. This growth is very manageable and has long been anticipated, well within the projected growth of the regional official plan. Next slide, please. We'll now move to stage 2, which the lands are in blue color. These are the lands that were designated for development as part of the 2022 Regional Official Plan and were enough to accommodate all projected growth to the year 2051 and utilize most of our remaining sewage capacity. This sustainable official plan was a careful balance between protecting farmland and adding thousands of new township residents to our rapid growth rates, staying within the yellow countryside line, and still ensuring space for future growth beyond 2051. Next slide, please. The first parcel for this stage is located on the west side of Nafziger Road, between the CN Railway tracks and Waterloo Street, which is known as the Cachet Homes property. For those locally, you may recall this was the parcel of land where the developer had applied for a ministerial zoning order, or an MZO, back in 2021 during the COVID pandemic. But because of all the public outcry regarding their attempt to bypass all proper planning processes, Cachet pulled out of the MZO. The south section of this parcel will be commercial industrial, as it abuts the Alpine fertilizer plant, where a buffer needs to be kept from the residential portion of the development due to the anhydrous ammonia that is present at this site. Next slide, please. The second blue parcel is on the west side of Baden, just west of Brenneman Drive and on the south side of Schneider's Road, across from Sir Adam Beck Public School. Next slide, please. Adding stage 2 on top of our current state, which includes the populations from stage 1, will bring our projected population to 21,250, adding 6,750 people and reducing our remaining water and sewage capacity to about 3,250 people. Next slide, please. The increased farmland destruction over our current state is a total of 704 acres, with 420 acres allocated for residential use and 284 acres being commercial industrial. Also to note, to this point, the proposed developments are all within the countryside line and approved as part of the Regional Official Plan in 2022, which keeps it all within our means and within the long-term growth that we expected, which is still very ambitious, growth levels far exceeding most of North America. Next, please.
So Kevin, I'm going to give you 2 additional minutes because I know there were some logistics and the timer didn't stop. And then I'm in the hands of council in terms of time because it is based off of our procedural bylaw. So that is council's decision. But you have 2 additional minutes.
Okay, we'll try to go as fast as we can. Our next slide will now add in parcels of land outlined in orange, which makes up the 2023 forced boundary expansions by the Ford government that also breaches what is supposed to be our protected countryside line. Lands that were supposed to last for generations have all been designated for development. Next slide, please. Adding in stage 3, New Hamburg and Baden are expected to grow to 32,252 people, more than double our current population and 7,700 more people than our water and sewage capacity can support. So this begs the question, where will the water come from and the sewage go to as the Ninth River is beyond its assimilative capacity? Next slide, please. The largest section of these forest expansions is the area east of Nafzinger Road and north of Highway 78 to Schneider's Road. This majority of the addition breaches the countryside line, which is the orange area south of the CN railway tracks. The area south of this tracks is expected to be commercial industrial. Next slide, please. This stage also adds an additional 1,500 acres of increased land use over today's status, of which 1,000 acres would be residential and 499 acres commercial industrial, which leaves one final stage. Next slide, please. The industrial megacenter site, shown here in red, another forced expansion by the Ford government in the region of Waterloo, is shrouded in secrecy. There is a non-disclosure agreement, no end use, no end user, no studies, no plans, no budget, no respect for landowners and farmers who have been bullied, no water, no sewage, and not one public meeting to inform the local residents, which makes no sense. This stage is a challenge for what is a small rural agricultural community where the farming is the biggest, most successful, and robust industry. Next slide, please. This mega-industrial site will bring our population to 41,750, which is an increase of 27,250 people over our current status, and leaves a massive shortfall in our water and sewage capacity of 17,250. The increased land used over today has now increased by 2,300 acres, of which 1,028 is residential and 1,300 acres commercial and industrial. However, the implications get even worse and more challenging. And this is where I'm unsure what to do, because the slides say one thing and I've got to somehow skip through it and that.
So if you can summarize it.
Yeah, I can summarize it, and I guess.
Otherwise, I need to ask council for approval to extend by 5 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, in the interest of the community in the presentation, I'd be willing to put forward an amendment to our procedural bylaw to allow.
To suspend the current procedural bylaw.
I'd be willing to suspend till just complete the presentation.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those who can vote in favor. Okay, I see it's unanimously so.
Excellent.
But again, if we
even Alfred supported it. Excellent. Thank you.
If you can just keep it tight.
Yeah, we're down to the last couple pages here. So, You've likely noticed on this slide, as all the other slides, the prominence of the roads and highways, shown in white in the center, bordered by purplish pinkish color. We're showing the main regional roads that need to be expanded from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, such as Nafzinger Road, Bleams Road, Schneider's Road, Sandhills Road, and the roads in and out of our beloved Punky Doodles Corner. Highway 78 would need to be expanded from 4 lanes to 6 lanes in order to take all the increased traffic. You may have also noticed the need for interchanges at all the major intersections, as with the increased traffic flow, traffic lights would be a nightmare. Please take note that these interchanges would take away many local businesses: Ontario Drive and Gear, McDonald's, Cloverleaf, Maple Leafs Food, Tim Hortons, Expressway Ford, No Frills, and all the homes that would no longer be there. Mike Harris Jr. had indicated this site would create 30,000 jobs. Given 3 shifts, what sort of traffic nightmare would there be with 10,000 people coming and 10,000 people going 3 times a day? There could be upwards also of 1,000 trucks per day to a gigafactory this large, in addition to numerous freight trains. And this is all still in addition to thousands of new additional vehicle trips each day for the housing and population growth we've already outlined. And this just doesn't impact New Ham-Badenburg. For kilometers in every direction, roads and communities will be impacted. What does St. Agatha look like with 4 or 6 lanes of traffic trying to get through on one of the only roads to Waterloo? What becomes of Petersburg as developers target its new infrastructure for land for hundreds or even thousands of homes? Our entire municipality and surrounding municipalities will be heavily impacted by these thousands of new vehicle trips daily and growth. And there are likely many other land parcels facing massive development pressures that we haven't even factored into our calculations. For example, the Good Farm on Bleams Road in South New Hamburg sits here surrounded by development and servicing infrastructure on every side. We know of no way to defend this farm from a developer arguing it is good planning to develop it at the Ontario Land Tribunal. So it is very likely that our estimates are too low, and that if we start down the path of mega development, it will quickly be beyond the size and scope of anything we can currently anticipate. With a population of tens of thousands of new people, we'll become the 4th major urban city in Waterloo Region, alongside Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. This mega development is being pushed by Mike Harris Jr. in the province with no regard to resources, planning, or our community concerns, and must be stopped. On a more positive note, it has been great to see the community participation in the new draft Wilmot official plan and a long-term planning effort that has made it very clear that our citizens want to remain a small, agriculturally focused rural community, not an urban industrial city. We urge Wilmot Council to keep moving forward with this practical, desirable official plan. We need Council to finally declare that you are an unwilling host. Now that you've just lost control of our water, in addition to our land, planning, and future, what more is it going to take? And we urge citizens to keep speaking up by the thousands, as they have for over 2 years now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin and John. I'll let everybody get back to their seats. And John, very well done on your Vanna White. That's
it actually is surprisingly hard to fit those little puzzle pieces in the right places, even with some practice.
Fair enough. Thank you again for coming in to present tonight. And I know that you guys have...
Are there questions
John, he wanted to take photos.
Yep.
Yes, and I know you guys have put a lot of effort into this. Thus, again, why I was willing to have you come forward. Again, as you know, Land Assembly is regional and provincial jurisdiction, and water, as much as I would love to say it's Wilmot's resource, it is a Crown provincial resource, and the region is responsible for it. Yeah. With that, were there any questions, councillors, of clarification that they had for our presentation? Okay, I just want to make sure Councillor Martin didn't have one because I just can't see him yet.
And if I can just comment, this has been a massive team effort. The number of people who have been involved in this, in trying to project, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to map it, and just try to portray what do these complex planning documents, like an official plan or OP or whatever, look like in a visual way that most citizens will be able to understand. And the idea of printing this big was we wanted people to be able to interact and literally walk all over it and see their own street, be able to see what's going to be happening in the neighborhoods around them as the years ahead unfold. So our plan from here really is to take this out around the township and to try to get as many people involved and engaged with that education and awareness as possible. So.
And can people go to your website if they're
Yes, we are hoping, once we've done a few run-throughs and are a little more practiced, still only our second time here, we hope to do a recorded online multimedia type version of this, where we'll have a proper voiceover, animations, and everything like that, and then that will be even more accessible to people. So,
great. Yeah. Councillor Martin, I just didn't see you when I asked if council had questions. Did you have any questions for our presenters tonight? Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Well, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate both of you coming in and putting this map together, presenting it to us. And believe me, I respect the group that cares deeply about the community and advocating for what it believes is right. It's very important. But I'm wondering about some of this information that you're presenting, because based on the information I know that we've seen and some of the decisions we've made, I would suggest that maybe some of the information here is not accurate. Well, for example, we have a map where we've already designated certain residential growth areas, and we've denied others. So there are a few areas here where you've placed developments where we've simply said, no, that's not going to happen. And there's also some areas where there's development being put onto floodplains or private property that are all part of already existing lots. So I'm not suggesting that this isn't possible, but I'm just saying that there are some, I think we can agree to maybe disagree on some of these things. Yes, there's definitely growth and development coming, but I think this is probably the ultimate extreme, and certainly based on the information that I know that we have available and that is publicly available on our website, we have a map that we've put together where we've shown where we've designated all the land. So agree that some of this is possible, but not necessarily all of it.
Yeah.
That's just a comment.
No, an excellent comment, and you'll have no idea how many hours we agonized over so many of those decisions ourselves. You know, the decision to build in floodplains. Absurd. Who would ever do that? But we're watching McDonald's being built in a floodplain in Burlington right now. Yeah, they're building it up on a little hump, but they're trying it. And what we see is when land costs $1 million an acre, don't underestimate what somebody's going to do or who's going to take a run at it to see just what they might be able to get away with. Some of the other developments, indeed, we've seen them taken out of the township planning, but then we see still the planners for those developers showing up at $500 an hour to meeting after meeting after meeting. Well, I don't think they've gone away if they're still paying somebody $500 an hour to be party to the process. And I think we need to anticipate that they're going to take a run at the OLT and try to overturn that township planning. So, I think we've tried to err on the side of caution of putting in a lot of those things. You're right, it might not happen, but we'd rather have it on here and find out that it doesn't than be surprised to find out that it does. And even other little surprises. The presentation we just saw before this, a few minutes ago here, is actually coming in at more than double the density that we used in our planning here. So that's hundreds of more homes and potentially hundreds of more people and thousands of more vehicle trips a day just from that development alone that aren't in any of our calculations. So the future is hard. We've tried really hard to be conservative here, but I think it's a balance. So.
I think it's fair to say there's a lot of assumptions that have to go in, and planning is always moving. Exactly. Councillor Martin does have a question first. Is it a follow-up, Councillor Wilkins? Yeah.
Through the chair, thank you. Just a quick rebuttal. I agree. I think ultimately it's just wanting to make sure that we're all working off the same set of facts, and,
Yes.
and make sure that we have an understanding that there are things in here that are currently not planned for.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I also want to comment too, we wanted to come here first.
Kevin, I think we're just going to take that as a comment just for sake of the rest of the agenda tonight as well.
Sure.
But yes, I appreciate it, and you guys even said at the start that there were assumptions made because some of the information is either changing or you didn't have it all.
Yeah.
So, but Councillor Martin, I think, has a question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen. I appreciate Mr. Thomason and Mr. Jordan coming tonight and presenting, and all of this. It does get complicated, and I agree with the comments that have been made. Some of these projections, it's hard to know, and it's important that we have accurate information. In that line, I have previously spoken to Mr. Jordan about some of the online ads or making fun of councillors. My recommendation to Wilmot Can is to be straightforward. And so the online, Instagram that you had on me just wasn't accurate. And I spoke to Mr. Jordan about that. I would ask you to be accurate, not make things up about us, but let's have straightforward and public discussions that are respectful to each other.
Okay, that's a little bit outside of what was presented today, but that comment has been noted. Thank you, Councillor. Were there any questions about the presentation remaining from Council? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, I think through you, Mayor, I would hope that we can test some of these assumptions against our official plan once we come up with them. And I realize extrapolating, my tongue doesn't get around that. I used to be able to know how to say it. How you project into the future, how's that? Is always an imperfect art. And how you do that and what assumptions are the base of those projections always impact. But I appreciate the zeal by which you look at preserving farmland, and I came into this position with that same objective without realizing there were some NDAs in place that prevented from expressing my full vim and vigor in that regard. So anyhow.
Thank you. Councillor Stu.
I just want to make a quick comment. I want to thank Kevin and John for coming out. I know you guys definitely don't get paid to do this work, and there is a love for the community. And although we can agree to disagree on certain portions of the map of if it's going to happen, if it's not going to happen, I want to thank you guys for coming out and essentially doing your civic duty and making your opinions and feelings known. great job on the map. That must have taken a lot of time and effort to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to state that your voices and your opinions are not lost on us. We definitely gather. We have a lot to go over, but thank you for coming up.
Councillor Dunstall wants to make it
Everyone
everybody
else has, so I just want to echo how my fellow councillors have chosen to let you know you did a great job. And I also want to know, where'd you get the map?
Yeah, it was printed locally, printed in town.
It's printing.
So,
Good job.
Yeah.
Well done. It was a great
printing.
visual.
Yep, and as the cartography. And I guess I don't want to underestimate the dozens of people who've put time and energy into this map. It isn't just some of the, I'll call it the figureheads you see here.
Thank you, Kevin.
It's big, and we wanted you guys to see it first. That includes staff as well as council. We didn't want to be out in the community with something that you hadn't seen. We realized there could be lots of different interpretations. Please give us ideas, give us feedback. Let's design the future our community needs.
Thank you. And with that, thank you again both, and for all of the others who put time and effort into this. Yeah, I was actually going to suggest a quick recess just to allow you guys to gather up all of your items. If I could have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor will reconvene in about 5 minutes. Thank you again. I'd be looking for a motion to reconvene at 7:43 p.m. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor, that carries unanimously. We have no delegations, no correspondence, no consent agendas, so we will jump into our reports. The first one, the recommendation is that report COR-2026-08, adoption of use and acceptance of electronic signatures policy at the Township of Wilmot be received for information, and that Council direct staff to present a bylaw to adopt a use and acceptance of electronic signatures policy for the Township as attached in this report. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. And I will turn it over to our clerk to give us this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Council. So staff are recommending adoption of a use and acceptance of electronic signatures policy. Electronic signatures have been legally recognized for decades and are now widely used across all sectors. Adoption of this policy is anticipated to expedite some workflow processes and enhance contract management. I don't have any further comments, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you through the chair. Really no questions. I think I'm just happy to see that we're implementing a policy because this has been happening outside of the township for, I think, at least a dozen or so years that I can remember signing an electronic document. So happy to see it coming forward and look forward to the increased efficiency.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cressman.
A no-brainer.
Well, with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. Thank you. On to our second report, and this is for the Council Remuneration Review. Council does have both the report as well as the very lengthy recommendation, so I won't read through it, but I would be looking for a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Dunstall, and I will turn it over to Director O'Krafka to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. As Council is aware, this has been a progressive report over a number of, it feels like years, but it's really just months. Staff updated the previous report, some of the COLA numbers that had been applied. And basically, Council in general, it's always difficult to talk about the remuneration of your own salaries. This deals with the next term of Council and the starting point for that. Staff have looked at what we would say are sort of four main options, although, as we all know, there's any multitude of options that Council could choose for the next Council's remuneration. We've used the base as one option, the PESHI recommendation from 2023 that was applied to staff of 50%. The second was 60%, and that's the one that actually did get applied to staff, plus COLA. And then many comparators out there. Obviously, the previous report that's attached includes comparator numbers, but most recently, Woolwich Township set a new remuneration for its salary and for its council and mayor for the next term of council. And so that would be a logical comparator, same region, same structure. So we presented those. We've recommended the 60% plus COLA, which equates to what staff were given in 2023. It sets the benchmark the same as what staff are at. And that was based on a comprehensive comparative analysis. And that's the second part of the recommendation, is that we do recommend, once again, that in 2027, as part of the market compensation review, that a full market compensation review of council and mayor salaries be included as well. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes, strong mayors, things like that. So staying competitive and comparative to our comparators would be logical in the recommendation of staff.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I read through the report, and I just think comparing income without taking into consideration our financial position doesn't give a really clear picture. I doubt that the ones that we used to compare had a 27% increase in taxes over the last 2 years. We have another 9% levy. I think we have one more year of the 9% levy. The ones that we used as comparators, some of them had twice the amount of income that we had. We had 24 million. There were some in there with $70 million in income. And I know that that's because well, I think a large portion of it is because we have such a small amount of industrial, which we're trying to change. So no, it's not closed. We're open for business. But I did want to say, I mean, 40 to 70 million were some of the other ones compared to 24 million. We just don't have the base to be able to do that. In addition, I just don't think our residents can take on more. 27% in 2 years, that's a lot. And now we're asking them to take on more. I just don't think that I can vote yes on this. But I did take note of the comment that Councillor Sadhu had made the last time we were here, and he had mentioned that he felt that the demographics, it may be unfair for some younger people, especially he had mentioned a single mom. And I think that part of being a councillor is a responsibility to have a civic duty. So that, you can't put a price on that. And I don't think we always have to look at compensation to accommodate. We could look at offering some kind of daycare or offering hybrid so that they could call in. I think there are other solutions that we could use that would not include taxing our residents anymore. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. You know, it's interesting. This is a very difficult topic, and I appreciate the comments that Councillor Dunstall has just made, and there are some very valid points in there. I think, you know, when we're looking at this, I mean, certainly over the last 3.5 years, this is not an easy job, and it sometimes can be a thankless job. But I think it is important from my perspective that we have to look at remuneration as something that can potentially attract someone into this role. Yes, I agree. Civic duty and our love of it is probably what draws us here more than anything. But I think it's when we also look at the amount of time that we give up and the sacrifices that we have to make from time to time, the remuneration is that trade-off and that give back to say thank you for being part of the township and the governance structure. So, you know, I think the other key takeaway from this is that this is not something that this council will benefit from in any way. This is really making a decision for the future council. Some of us may be here, none of us may be here. We don't know. And I think something that I've come to terms with is if we pass this and move forward with it, or even knowing that I'm in favor of what's being recommended, you know, I'm prepared to face that at the doors come election time. And I understand it's not a great topic or a fun one, but I think ultimately it's, you know, $27,000 more annually in terms of the cost for governance, which I think is not necessarily a huge price to pay to have folks attracted to this job and wanting to dedicate their time to it. So I want to make sure that we keep pace and we don't run into a situation where potentially 10 years from now you got to do a massive increase to try and make up for it. And I want to make sure that folks are interested or can consider this role in addition to their other opportunities, but at least be compensated fairly. So I'm in favor of what's being put forward. I know it's painful, but you know, this is for the next council. This council made the decision to push off any increases in remuneration for 4 years out of respect for the township budget. So I think we owe it to the future council to at least look at this. So,
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Mayor. And I understand what Councillor Wilkinson is saying. 27,000, I get that. But this is, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, it's more about telling or saying to our constituents, we hear you, we know you're hurting, we know the last 2 years, 3 years have been difficult for you, and next year we're already coming in at 9. So it's more of a, I'm with you. It hurts, but I'm with you. That's it. Thank you.
I just want to make one point of clarity. We're not already coming in at 9 in respect to that council motion. That's 9% on the capital portion of the budget.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Mayor.
Were there any other comments, Councillor Cressman?
Yes, I am of two minds on this. I agree with Councillor Wilkinson. I actually go back to some comments that I would say the Right Honourable Barry Wolf talked about, as if we could find one consultant we don't pay in the next year and we're saved $30,000, we've earned our salaries. So I guess I'm of the mind that this makes sense. Option 3, going forward, it isn't, I don't think, exorbitant. And I realize, yes, it is $27,000, and I hate to say it, yes, we got to pay $90,000 now to figure out what's wrong with the septic system at the New Dundee Community Center. And if you're in business, you know this happens, and the unknown breakdowns and come along, and they catch you from left field, and you have to respond to them. So that being said, I would like to focus in on suggesting that on a go-forward basis, that the new council looks at maybe trying to reduce some of the outside consultants that are brought in, use the expertise around the table, the Horseshoe and our staff. Maybe it puts us out on the limb a little further, or them out on the limb a little further, but I think we have excellent staff, and I think that $27,000 can be made up in other ways. So I would not be voting in favor of option 3.
Councillor Stu?
Yeah, not an easy decision. Quite awkward, if I'm going to be honest. Not too many people would be sitting in a public forum talking about raises for the future. I did struggle with this one, but then it came to a realization that it's not going to affect this current council. It'll be for the next council, and there is a barrier in between that. It's called the election. We're going to have to earn the public's trust again. All the cards are going to be on the table. I'm going to go door to door, and I will have to answer for this. I have had conversations with residents bringing up this very topic, and I would say for the most part, 9 out of 10 of them have said, guys, like, you have a tough job. It's not a large number. It's not something we want, but if you want to have good candidates, you got to pay for it. Not that we're in this for the money. Obviously, at, what is it, $25,000, I mean, we're not going to be getting rich off this by any means. I would say, to Councillor Cressman's point, that yes, through policy decisions, we have the ability to save millions. I referenced some of the decisions we made earlier in our term of council regarding ice pads and et cetera, that would have a far-reaching impact on the tax base than $27,000 or $26,000 a year on an operational budget. To Barry Wolf's comment of, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. What are they?
Cut one consultant.
Consultants, yes, the mighty consultants. You cut one consultant, and that would pay for this tenfold. So, yes, awkward conversation, having it in a public forum, but we are having it in a public forum, and I, for one, am ready to face that when I do go to the voters and ask for their trust again, and I know I will have to answer to them.
Any other comments or questions, Council? Okay. I will just add in my 2 cents. Yeah, when I had asked / directed staff back in the fall to bring this forward for Council's consideration, and thank you to staff who have brought forward this information. Now, my intent was really coming out of some of the work that I've been fortunate of being on AMO's Healthy Democracy Board, as well as in rooms at AMO and Roma, and there's a growing body of research, and I know I've already said this to Council many times, but there is a growing body of research about engagement in local democracy, and that it's declining, and that less people are putting their names forward, and one of those big underlying factors is affordability. And we, in my opinion, as a community, need to be incentivizing enough through remuneration that we're allowing people who can bring the types of decision making to the table that we want to see as a community forward aren't being stopped because the remuneration isn't something that they're able to make work in their daily lives. I think that's really important. I completely agree, Councillor Dunstall, with there is a sense of civic duty, and I do think that that's why, in my opinion, we're all around this table, both staff and council, but at the same time, I don't want it to become an argument of civic duty or remuneration. And I also get that it's hard because council and mayor doesn't actually have a job description beyond the legislative duties, but it's not like a normal job that you go in and your performance review instead is every 4 years, and that's if you choose to run again. So I get that it's a different nuance, but at the same time, I think it's really important that we are allowing people in our community to engage in a way to put their name forward if they want to, that money isn't the factor that's holding them back, and that we're properly compensating, because at the end of the day, we govern a multi-million-dollar budget and corporation, and for the sake of it to run smoothly, and I think even for the sake of our staff, having people who are here being compensated effectively, working with them is important. So those are my 2 cents to add on as to why I will be supportive of this. But with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, and that is carried. On to our next report, and this is 11.3, which I'm quite excited about, weddings at the castle. It's both for information for council, as well as that council rescinds the resolution of 1994-73 ban on interior weddings and wedding party photography at the castle. So I'd look to get this on the floor with a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu, and I will invite our Director Catania to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen.
Nothing to announce. I'm just excited about the money making, okay? Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. The original ban was put into place to manage concerns that this event of this type could potentially cause damage to the museum. In an effort to further enhance the community benefit and utilization of Castle Kilbride, staff are recommending that Council rescind Resolution 9473 in order to permit small wedding ceremonies within the interior of the castle. I'm happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Councillor Cressman, no, nothing to announce, but really excited about this generation opportunity, and I know people have asked if they can have photos in the castle for their wedding, so I think this is a really great opportunity. But Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, to Director Catania, was the spirit, or I guess the perceived spirit of the original resolution more so to keep flash photography out of the castle? And I mean, has the technology with cameras advanced to a point where it's not going to be a concern? Is that the driving force behind this originally?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Wilkinson, that is correct. I think back in the 90s, obviously outdated technology, and just with the artifacts and obviously the murals as well, there was some potential risk to that. We don't feel there's a risk to that, and to allow for that when we do have some small ceremonies.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I love this. I think it's a great opportunity for us to make more funds. And if my husband's watching, this is going to be where I'm going to have my next wedding. So just so you know, book me in, okay? Book me in. Actually, maybe it better be a vow renewal, okay? But thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anybody want to try and follow that? Okay, not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. On to 11.4, and this is renewal of agreements with Garden Wilmot, and which is also known as the Wilmot Horticultural Society, as attached in the report. I'd look for a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and I will turn it back over to Director Catania.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. A little bit of housekeeping here, and I'll be brief. The work of Garden Wilmot is governed by an agreement which has now expired. The attached renewal agreement outlines the terms of the partnership between the township and Garden Wilmot, which is formerly the Wilmot Horticultural Society, and is intended to continue to serve and benefit both parties. Happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this report, Council? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to 11.5, and this is proposed sponsorship, naming rights, and donations policy. Again, council has the report and can see the recommendation. I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Cressman. And I will turn it back over to Director Catania. I'll also note I'm also excited about this one, but nothing to announce.
Thank you, Mayor Sallin. This report is to provide council with information related to the proposal of sponsorship, naming rights, and donation policies, and for council to consider approval for implementation. Previously, the township has accepted sponsorship, naming rights, and donation opportunities, but has yet to formalize framework on these opportunities. During previous budget discussions, council identified sponsorship as an opportunity to increase funding for asset replacement or to enhance or expand various programs and initiatives. Policies have been drafted to ensure that the appropriate framework is in place for these opportunities that safeguards assets, protects the township's reputation, and creates an environment that encourages collaboration for sponsorship agreements. Given the evolving nature of the township's programs and services, a master inventory is required to identify the assets and their market asset value that can create additional revenue opportunities for the township. This inventory list will be presented to council at a future date to approve the list of draft assets, but also the sponsoring and their values that correspond with those assets. This will also include potential naming opportunities that are either at the WRC, community halls, or even outdoor spaces. Happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. We do have some questions. We will start with Councillor Dunstall and work our way across.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I love this, and Director Catania, kudos to you. We've talked around this horseshoe about finding ways to generate more revenue, and you've just proven two ways, and so thank you very much. I think this is a great idea.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you to the chair. I second those comments by Councillor Dunstall. Definitely in favor of increased revenue opportunities and finding a way to use our existing assets and resources. I did have a question. I know when we've looked at advertising boards in the past, we'd looked at like a local first type of policy. I would anticipate we'd probably see local interest naturally take place, but I'm wondering how you might look at maybe prioritizing that, and if not, I have a suggestion, which would sort of be that the township will prioritize local business for sponsorship and naming rights opportunities where feasible. However, we're still balancing financial return, community benefit, and alignment with township values. Obviously want local partnerships, but again, if there's an opportunity that comes along from, say, someone that is so great that we'd be fools to turn it down, we want to make sure that we're taking that into account. But just a general comment, would love to make sure that we're trying to push that local option first.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Wilkinson, that would be the spirit of these policies, is really to serve local first. Can't prevent the outside, but I think when we look at a lot of our assets, our recreational assets, we want to be able to help out with either community organizations or businesses to help promote some of their initiatives, and it's a bit of a win-win for both. I think where you'd see outside of the community potential for naming rights as an example is if we were looking at overall, and I'm just throwing out there the WRC as an example, that might be something where it would be a procurement of an expression of interest where there'd be a high dollar amount, but that's something staff have to look back or to research further with the list of assets and their valuation based on size of the community, because it all varies in different communities across the province, and that's something where it's a high dollar amount. Obviously council would have to approve that, but also you might want a little bit of a further reach to get more sponsorship dollars that way. But otherwise, Brink Board advertising is a great example. You'll see that in a lot of local communities where it's really serving their own, because obviously if they have their any type of business on those boards, they're contributing to the community, and no different when you go to other communities as well.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Director Catania. I'm pleased as well about this. I think we've talked about it, had the opportunity to listen to the consultant that presented to you in Kingston twice over a period of time. I think once with Director O'Crafton in Ottawa this past year. I guess the only question I had in reading through was the term the length of naming rights for a piece, a fixed asset. I think he was strongly suggesting 10 years as compared to 20 years, which I believe was in here. So I think part of your scoping out is trying to figure out what do other organizations in terms of length of name, what do they normally, and okay, I guess it's.
Through you, Mayor Sallin and Councillor Cressman, and to follow up on your comments and question, when we look at naming rights generally, or at least from what I've learned, you want to have a term to this. It shouldn't be indefinite, and I think we recognize the massive contributions this community has put into a lot of our existing assets. But I think in the past, it would be nice to have some term limits, because obviously there is the life of the asset, and you're not going to have that go beyond the life of the asset. So here, when we look at, as an example, you mentioned 10 years as a naming right or a term, you want to be able to have some type of limit, so that this way, it's not an indefinite process. I believe it is. I'm not sure if it's set at a specific time frame, but it's around, they range anywhere from 3 years for naming rights all the way up to around 10. I don't think they really go past 10 years, as you've commented on, Councillor.
Any other questions or comments, Council? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sallin, and I simply want to echo my colleagues around the table and appreciate Director Catania for bringing this forward. I'm certainly in favor of it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Cressman, I think, had another question.
Yeah, just one follow-up, which through you, Mayor, to Director Catania. I think the one point he likely made in his seminar to you that he made to us was, if somebody else's name was on an asset, that it's important to go to that family or et cetera to get them, their buy-in on having somebody else's name associated with that asset going forward. And it's just good public relations, I guess. And I'm not suggesting you wouldn't finesse it properly, but that's something that's stuck in my head, and he stated very clearly.
I see a nod that's been noted, and I think acknowledged. My only question of clarity, and I think you kind of answered it, but there is flexibility with each independent naming right for negotiation, correct?
Through you, Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm also very excited to see this come forward. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments from council, so all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to announcements for this evening. Does council have any announcements? No? Okay, I have a few. One, in case you didn't know now, book your next wedding at Castle Kilbride, or if you're interested in donations or naming rights, you can reach out to staff. But the actual announcements that I had for me was the fire department wants to remind folks that a burn permit is required for all recreational and agricultural burning in Wilmot. In order to get your permit, please visit wilmot.ca/burn permits for more information. It was talked a little bit about tonight, but a draft of the official plan open house will be held on April 28th from 6 until 8 p.m. at the Wilmot Recreation Complex. And for those who are unable to attend, you can register for a one-on-one call to discuss how the proposed plans relate to your property or any other questions you have regarding the draft official plan. And you can visit our Engage page for more details on that. And lastly, community groups and vendor applications are now open for Wilmot's Canada Day event on July 1st. So be sure to visit wilmot.ca/Canada Day for more information. And those applications are closing on May the 20th at 4 p.m.
Is that what Steve wanted?
Oh, perhaps, sorry, Councillor Martin, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen. You brought up Canada Day, and that's what I was going to do as well. So thank you for that. Sponsorships, we're looking for people that you can, here's a naming right possibility as well, that by sponsoring you can have your business advertised on Canada Day. So thank you.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing anything else, so with that, I would be looking for a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor, thank you, everybody, and have a great night.